Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 517. He parts himself like leaves. Now, of course, the minute we see leaves, we want to think of Emily's contemporary, who she apparently never knew, Walt Whitman, and Leaves of Grass. But here we're back to one more of her nature riddle poems and a concern about the frost. Now, in some ways, we're back to poem 332. You guys will remember when we played this game. There are two ripenings, one of sight, whose forces sapphiric wind until the velvet product drop spicy to the ground. A homelier maturing, a process in the burr that teeth of frost alone disclose in far October air. Now, this is again, this poem we're looking at, a riddle poem, although she'll tell us finally that the he of the poem is the frost. Emily will mention the frost in 37 of her poems. A lover of nature and a lover of what happens when the dynamic growth of the spring-summer comes to its early demise through, obviously, the frost. Now, our assumption is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily is our playlist. I'm hopeful you worked through our set of introductory comments. I'm hopeful that you've worked through the preceding 516 poems. We just finished with 516, Beauty Be Not Caused. And here again, we're back to Emily's love of nature. Now, I want you to pay attention to the verbs of this poem, because Emily will stack them to bring about this feeling of the power of the frost. He parts himself like leaves, and then he closes up, then stands upon the bonnet of any buttercup, and then he runs against and oversets a rose, and then does nothing. Then away upon a jib he goes, and dangles like a mote suspended in the noon, uncertain to return below or settle in the moon. What come of him at night, the privilege to say, be limited by ignorance what come of him that day. The frost possess the world, in cabinets be shown, a sepulchre of quaintest floss, an abbey, a cocoon. You'll remember our study of cocoon from our study of 129. Now notice that she doesn't tell us right away that it is the frost, leading us to ask, what is she talking about? Notice here that frost is, again, given masculinity, not femininity. He parts himself, and then dash, like leaves, dash, notice leaves capitalized, and then he closes up. What are we saying? The frost it can be unpredictable. In other words, it's not always clear exactly when it happens. Then, notice the verbs, from parts to stands, upon the bonnet of any buttercup. In other words, the way in which the frost is this killer of a kind, right, that will come and take away the life of the buttercup. Then runs against and oversets a rose. So notice we go from the buttercup to the rose. And then does nothing. Notice capitalized. Then away upon a jib. Are we arguing that the frost is somehow spread transversely? Some scholars have pointed that out. This is the only use, by the way, of this term jib. It's either for her a sailing term or it's the arm of a crane. Probably she is making a sailing term here. Then does nothing. Then away upon a jib he goes. In other words, comes, stays for a while, creates some kind of havoc, and then leaves. Dangles is the next fun verb, like a mote suspended in the noon, uncertain. And I think that may be the key word of this poem, to return below or settle in the moon. It's not always clear what come of him. Still, we don't know exactly, like, what are we talking about at night? The privilege to say, be limited by ignorance, what come of him that day. In other words, we try to predict these things, she says, and we can't always predict them. And then finally she tells us it is the frost. The frost possess the world. Now, again, you can read this poem as symbolic of what the frost is. Certainly, of course, Emily could be speaking about the frosty nature of politics, which could lead to, for example, the fighting of a war that we will call the Civil War. She could be talking about the frost symbolically here. The frost possess the world, and then finally in cabinets be shown, a way of almost collection. A sepulchre of quaintest floss, an abbey, a cocoon, the way in which she will say that the frost can play different kinds of roles different kinds of powerful ending roles. At 2A, I think our argument is just that nature itself is remarkable in every way. At 2B, again, her verbs, parts, closes, stands, runs, oversets, goes, dangles. These are all amazing. At 3A, we read a poem like this, we can't help but think about Emerson's Nature, the classic essay we've given full lectures at LearnStrong.net, or Thoreau's Walden as well. We've given full lectures at LearnStrong.net over that. And then, of course, Emily's other 37 Frost poems, if we can call them that. They're fun to study as well. Finally, at 3B, what are your feelings about the frost and the way in which it will alight and begin to take away the life of spring and summer to bring fall? Thank you.